Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I have interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of songwriters about the writing process. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So I've always been interested in treating songwriters the same way that we treat poets and traditional prose writers, as writers, plain and simple. There is no talk of how bands get their name, favorite tour stories, favorite foods, band drama, or anything else. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers as we go deep, deep, deep into the writing process. That's it, nothing else. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it's Purity Ring. Purity Ring is Corin Roddick and Megan James. And as I told them before we officially started, I always love talking to artists whose art I admire and really love. And what I love about the Purity Ring sound is that it's so unique. And I just don't know, at least when they first were putting out music, that it was one of those bands that when you heard them on the radio, how old am I? Wherever you heard them, you knew it was them. And I've just always really admired the work that they do, the craft. And so this was a great, I loved the insight they gave into how they make that stuff. As I mentioned sometime during the interview, this was like the bizarro interview because I feel like everything that other songwriters have said, they do the opposite in some cases. I think at some point I'd mentioned to Corin about getting ideas when you're doing monotonous activities. And he said, no, that never happens to him. But, Megan talks about frequent breaks, and that's important, that she knows that's a part of her process. And we talked about the importance of walking. I feel like that's every interview I do, the importance of movement. And we also finally, Megan was able to tell me the hypnagogic state, because all the time I do these interviews, and I always forget the name of it. And the hypnagogic state is that state that you're in where you're not asleep and you're not awake. It's that haze, and the benefit, the number of times we get creative ideas in that hypnagogic state. Again, it's right before you fall asleep. So we talked about that too. Anyway, big fan of Purity Ring. Corin Roddick and Megan James, big fan of both of them, and hope you enjoy my interview with Purity Ring. Megan, we'll start with you, and this is the question I always start with all the artists is, do you think it's important to create in some fashion every day, or do you feel that by forcing things, maybe things become too derivative? And it can be like, whether it's writing in any form, whether it's just any kind of, is it important to create in some fashion every day?
I have a fraught relationship between those two things, because I do think it's important to be creative in whatever way. And yes, every day, but also I think with songwriting and any craft, the greats are people who do something every single day and are totally okay with just discarding and moving on. And you have to, yes, make something every day and then go through it and find what's the best. Or if you, sometimes things take more than a day, but yeah. So if I have so much respect for people who are able to sit down and do the same kind of creative process every day. I'm someone who needs a lot of breaks. So that often turns into distraction. And then my creative process is like, okay, I'm going to make pottery today. Okay, I'm going to sew today. Okay, I'm going to do a song today. Or all of it in one day. But yeah, in my mind, as a process, like creatively, they're all very interconnected and affect each other. So it's also kind of like doing something every day, but I don't know if it's making me great.
But you don't feel, if you didn't do it every day, do you start to get anxious, or do you just say, I'm going to do it every day? If it's something creative, you are doing it every day, but I guess if you don't, does anxiety start to creep in? Like I should be doing something?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes making something feels impossible because I can't move or something, or like I can't. I'm like, no, today, like, like anyone has days where they want to like watch TV or whatever, or you need a vacation or something. But like, um, yeah, I I do. The more days I go without making something, the sadder I get. Yes.
Corn, how about you?
Yeah, I love the idea of trying to do something creative every day, or especially like if we're talking songwriting, trying to write something every day. I
Mm.
I've had friends tell me that they do that, like they will try to come up with some kind of just simple melody or beginning of a song or just some kind of or a lyric or something every day, and then have like a library of things to go back to and look over. And I I've had I've done that for periods of time, but for me, it's it's a lot more difficult. It's to uh, continually do that because I find like my role in the band, uh, since I'm also like start songs with melodic ideas and instrumental ideas, things like that. But uh, that is such a small amount of how I spend my time. Um, since uh, I'll do the mixing and the fine tuning of the process, like the idea for me. I mean, maybe some people work really quickly when they're producing a song, but for us, it's often like we'll get like the beginning of a song idea, and that's when the actual writing happens. It feels like that's when there's like this burst of like just pure creativity at the beginning of it, where we have the melodies. Megan has the lyric ideas. Like I've got like sort of an aesthetic for the song, um, and then that's maybe 5% of the time spent on that song. The rest, the 95% of the rest of the time spent on it is like rearranging things, changing the drum sounds, like trying moving all the little parts around to like center the vocal in a certain way to like get the flow of the song. And like that, so sometimes that can happen in a week and sometimes it takes many months to for it to land where we want it to. Um so the reality is like that is how I spend most of my time working on music, and I don't spend enough time or as much time as I would like on that most exciting kind of 5%, where we're actually like just coming up with new things. And I think like it's always sort of like an ongoing struggle for me because I'll find myself like, especially when we're further into making an album and we have most of the song ideas started and we're like in the finishing process, I might go almost an entire year without when it feels like I haven't written anything new. And then it's quite challenging for me to then restart the writing process again after that because it feels like I'm like learning to ride a bike again because I've just been in this other kind of like curatorial mode of like how do I finish something that already exists and try to make it better. But I've gone through periods of time where I try to like take a month where I like spend like a 15 minutes every morning to like try to come up with a new song idea. And I've had various success with that. So I think like that's something that I want to try to work on myself is like divide my time better so I can like be like, hey, this portion of the day is just for making something new and I have to make sure I do that. And then the rest of the time is for like finishing projects. But I definitely have an issue with tunnel vision where like when I get focused on one thing, I can't even like I have a hard time like changing gears to be like, okay, now I have to come up with something completely new, even though it's like totally unrelated to the thing that I've spent my last week working on. So it's an ongoing struggle for myself that I'm trying to get better at.
I love it because Megan, you said you need breaks. And then Colin said he's got that tunnel vision where he can't, like, he's got to, he can't focus on anything else. But I want to ask you about the breaks because I did write this down. So are the breaks there, Megan? Are they, do you know that about yourself? Because I'm the same way. I know that I can't sit for long stretches. So I plan that as a part of my process. So it,
Mhm.
is it more of like, is it okay, I'm going to write for an hour, or is it like, do you know your limits when it comes to, okay, I need to take a 5 or 10 minute break or something, before I can continue writing?
Yeah, actually, this happens mostly with writing, I feel like, because it's such a the type of brain exercise it is, there'll come a point like like there'll come a point where I tap out. I'm like, "This isn't working anymore. This is just like fuzz." Um, and like, sometimes that state is like I think that happens mostly when I'm writing because I sit down and I'm like, this is what I'm gonna do right now. This is my schedule." But often when I'm writing more spontaneously, like when writing down my thoughts before bed, or waking up and like doing the artist's way 4 pages or something, um, like that is more of an exercise. And also for lyrics, I feel, and ideas in general for any writing, those pieces that are just mind spew are the best place for me to get um material for what I use in songwriting, or um yeah, or like more condensed writing, I guess, if it's not a poem.
Okay, so those breaks that you're taking, if I heard you correctly, you're still doing other artistic things like
Yeah,
pottering, things like that.
sure, sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I have to lay down." But yeah, it'll be like, "Okay, now I wrote this, now I'm gonna go make a shirt. Now I'm gonna go make a mug." Whatever. Like, yeah, I'm like jumping around between creative things that are like different parts of my body or different parts of my mind.
I love that because that's not an answer I hear very often. I mean, my first thought is when I have to tap out, it's let me go take a walk to just do
Ooh,
something just to empty my brain. But you're
walking
just doing,
too. Walking too. That's a good distraction. Yeah.
yeah, but you're doing, so is there any, so when you're involved in those creative breaks, do ideas still come to you? Is it because I interview a lot of songwriters or visual artists who get ideas during those times too.
Yeah, I think like with the um I feel like when you're stuck on writing, taking a walk is like if you want to keep writing, taking a walk is the best way to um get like whatever you're doing moving from your head through the rest of your body. So that you can, yeah, things tend to just move when you're walking, and it's like one of the best ways to write words, or melodies even. But yeah, I guess I'm like a very I'm someone, I care a lot about efficiency in sort of a, not in like in terms of like how I set up my kitchen or how I set up my time. I'm like, this works. This goes here because it works with this. Like I do that with my creative process too, or I try to, where it's like I want to, if I'm taking a break, I want to make use of that time.
This is so antithetical to what songwriters usually tell me. It's like they want to do all those things you say, but they never do those things. Like they want to be disciplined, they want to be efficient.
I mean, I'll be honest, like a lot of the time, instead of doing the other creative thing, I do just sit down, but or go for a walk. But still, it's like that is, I feel like it's all wrapped up in sort of like why my distractions are also creative. It's like that's also a break.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so Corn, so related to that, there was an article in the Washington Post about 5 years ago, and I always bring this up with songwriters, that why we get our best ideas in the shower. And the thinking behind that is that we get those ideas come to us when our brains are engaged in unconscious activities. The eureka moments never happen when we think about having a eureka moment. They happen when we are doing things like vacuuming, uh, do doing the dishes, folding laundry, mowing the lawn, things that require repetitive motions with no conscious thought. That's when the creative ideas come to us. And that's the whole thing behind the shower, is that you're not doing anything that requires that conscious thought. So, Corn, does that happen a lot to you, those ideas?
No, actually. Um,
This is like I just say this is the bizarro interview. I feel like nothing I've said. The
What
good
are
news
we?
is that, yeah, no, the good news is that everything I've heard, I've never heard before, which is just
Great.
amazing. I don't know what to do. It's just going to take me a long time to unpack this after the interview to think about this. So, okay, so please elaborate on that because I'm just stunned.
that's okay, so yeah, I'm just not I'm not the kind of person like as a creative person, I'm not it's not my process that I come up with things conceptually before I do them. Like I almost never when like we sit down to make a song, I I have zero intention ahead of time of like maybe if we're already working on an album or something, we kind of have like, you know, the themes or like the sonic palette sort of figured out already, but um I don't have things jump into my head like when I'm folding laundry or something and then I'm like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to go try to do that." Like I don't get melodies in my head. I don't get song ideas in my head. I don't like I don't wake up with an idea from a dream. Like for me it's 100% I just sit down to try to make some music and it I either just kind of mess around for a while and make nothing and then close everything without saving my ideas or or I kind of stumble upon something that I happen to like it's just kind of shooting in the dark and then have to find something to follow. So I'll find like whether it's just like, you know, a piano melody or like or I'm playing on a synth or like trying to manipulate a sample. I usually have kind of no real intention. I just kind of like explore and see waiting for like a spark to kind of show itself as something that's intriguing and then I will just kind of follow that and it's more of like a flow state type of thing where once there's something that I'm hearing that's exciting, I feel like it's already pulling the song in a certain direction and I just have to do my best to like try to kind of ride that wave, I guess, and get as many of those ideas out in that moment, and then afterwards, I maybe have these handful of things that I can try to curate more into becoming a song. But yeah, it is very much just like of the moment something happens, I try to chase it. I never sit down with like a concept of like, oh, this is the kind of song I want to make today. Like never.
Yeah, I don't hear that very often. I don't hear people say, like, this is what I want to do. Okay, so one follow-up is, do you ever get inspired by external sound? So, for example, I had Stu McKenzie of King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard on several years ago, and he said car alarms were inspiring. I had Josh Carter from Phanogram on, said that covered bridges, the beats of going over a covered bridge in upstate New York, those kind of. So, do you ever get inspired? Like, do you ever hear externally things and go, "Wow, that," like turn signals or something like that?
Yeah, I'll always notice like I'll always notice an interesting sound and enjoy it, but I think I don't usually like I never sample things. I never like try to I don't think it directly is something that I try to recreate afterwards. I think I will just be like, "Wow, that sounds cool," and then I'll just kind of leave it at that. Um, it won't necessarily be something that informs like a creative decision for me later. But yeah, I do love hearing like a weird like the one of the coolest sounds I heard, I think, in the last couple of years was at a geyser in Yellowstone. It was like this like deep, like gurgly, like earthly sound. It was just like so guttural that I tried to record it on my phone, but it really couldn't capture it. But it was like it was yeah, that's the most memorable strange like just sound of the earth that I've ever heard. But I don't think I haven't tried to recreate that because it just is, you know, a cool memory.
I reminds me, I had on Dave Lombardo from Slayer, drummer from Slayer, and he said that he was inspired. He put it didn't mean to, but he put a pair of sneakers in the dryer, and that rhythm it gave a good idea for a beat.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
stories like that, and I'm like, damn it, why? How come things like that never happen to me?
Yeah, it's really it's funny because it's a lot of drummers, predictably,
Mm.
who they are hearing
Yeah,
things
I mean,
and that
I grew
happens.
up as a drummer.
Oren
Like
is a drummer.
drums are my first instrument. So yeah,
Mm.
I don't know, but I think I think that's maybe why melodically, like I don't really think of melodies and stuff. Like I think like things just kind of feel like a
Yeah.
rhythm, and I try to follow that.
Okay, so I wrote down, you said you don't save your bad ideas. Um, I all that my first thought about that is that because you just think this will never happen, or is it I don't want to see that thing? I mean, I always worried that if I don't save my bad ideas, maybe they're going to be good in a year. But you were very deliberate about saying, yeah, I don't save those. So is there a reason why you don't save them?
Yeah, I mean, if I think something has a little bit of potential, I'll save it. Um, or if I'm like, maybe like I kind of have like if I think something's a maybe, I'll save it. But I think there's just something I like because when you're working on a computer or in like any kind of digital realm, or or even maybe if you're like writing, even say like I don't write lyrics personally, but I imagine like the same could apply to like it would be like writing on paper and then like crumpling it up and throwing it in the bin afterwards, right? But I think it's so easy now to save to have everything you do be something that you can come back to and recall in a second after like a year later. And I think just because that we have the ability to do that doesn't mean we should. Um like there's just something I like about like I work in a program called Ableton, and um there's just something I like about like working on something all day and then like at the end of it just being like, eh, and just closing it and not saving it. Like there's just like it's sort of like
Oren's like
like
a
it's
no
this.
clutter person.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a freedom to it that is kind of like I imagine like say maybe if you were a guitar player or a pianist or something like you could like sit down at the piano and just like play all day and then not have a record of it. Like you would have to go out of your way to like record it to be able to come back to it. So it's kind of like that, just sort of like free form exploration without feeling like without trying to pretend that everything is valuable. And I also just like the idea that things can exist only in the moment that they're being made and never again. Um, like it helps. Like I try to get away from the idea that like everything needs to be saved and is precious. Like I think it's nice to have things that only exist in the moment as you're making them, and then the next day it doesn't exist anymore. You don't remember it.
Okay, so Megan, I've
Yes.
read many places on the internet that you have just piles and piles of journals of your writing. So because a lot of songwriters tell me that they have somewhere in that closet there are just notebook after notebook after notebook. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. So how often do you go? First of all, I guess many part question. How long do they go back? And do you often go back to those for ideas? Maybe if you're stuck.
So I still keep a journal. I was thinking about this recently, actually. Um I grew up in the Mormon church, which is like there's and I was always like part of that for women is which like I now deny that like I'm not a Mormon and I'm not necessarily a woman. But I also whatever, yeah, prefer not to say. But anyway, um I kept a journal because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, and like and also it does so much. Like keeping I really feel like if people can, writing is like a doorway into a part of ourselves that is like always worth seeing. It's like yeah, I love writing. So yeah, I think as I was growing up and like when Purity Ring started, I was like writing every day religiously, I guess, like so to speak. But since I stopped, that like phase of my life ended, and with it, journal writing slowed down a lot. And like still, and I was also writing a lot because I had so many feel like conflicted feelings because I was like in a cult. Like, so I don't anyway, I like my relationship to how I grew up and like this religion that was in my bones has shifted along with like how I think of journal writing. But so yeah, I can't say that I have like, I do have a lot of journals. Like I do have piles, maybe not a closet, but and I do keep one and like write in a similar way to how I always did, or like how I found my way in. That's like, I guess not really like a diary. It's like I write like stream of consciousness. Like it's like often I think with our first record, I'm realizing that I was actually like in a sort of hypnagogic state when I wrote a lot of those lyrics, because it was like I'd be almost asleep and then I'd like start thinking of a poem in my head, sort of like I like thought of 2 lines and I was like, oh, I have to write this down, and then it would keep going. But yeah, and I think that's something that happened because I was writing so much. I was like yeah, my mind went on the page. But yeah, I do so many lyrics on our new record are from journals. But I've sort of matured into like editing things so that they fit into a song so that it's like what I want it to sound like, or like finding inspiration from other poets or books. Like I'm like also writing in a different way than the journal. I guess by like being inspired by other people's words too. So, and then making my own. Like I love reading a poem and then getting an idea, getting an idea and then making my own poem out of it. It's like almost like sampling. Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah.
I'm going to get very specific with this question, but songwriters, I can do an entire website dedicated just to this. I'm assuming you're a pen and paper person, not a computer person when it comes to writing these things.
Yes. I write differently on paper than when I'm typing.
I guess I asked this question because songwriters I've found are incredibly particular to color of ink, type of pen,
Black.
type of paper. There you go. See, black. Why black and why not blue or green or anything else?
I've preferred black ink since I was a child. I think I always thought, why blue? Like what? It's like you're writing a word. Ink is, but also there's no rules. I don't know. But yeah, I guess, and I've been thinking about buying a really nice pen lately.
See, you think I'm kidding. This is a conversation that we have for an hour because the devotion that I've heard some songwriters say they have fancy pens, the Moleskine notebook, but the disadvantage to that is that the more precious you make the process, the more pressure there is. So
yeah, you don't want to have like, I guess sometimes it's good to ritualize it, and then other times it's good to just like grab a napkin or whatever. But yeah, I've sort of shifted from, I like a journal because then every time you write, it's in one place and you can always like then I go back and I tab the pages if there's something good or whatever. But yeah, or a pad of paper I is good. But I also, again, with the efficiency, I'll also sometimes just use like scrap paper. And if I'm like writing for a song, then I'll use scrap paper. But if I'm writing for myself, whether it's used for a song or not, it's like more nice.
okay. My last follow-up to that, when you write something that you don't like, Are you crossing it out or scribbling furiously to just obliterate that word so you don't have to see it again?
It depends how much I hate it, but usually I just cross it out. I'll just be like, "No." And, like, I will never if it's crossed out, I'll never look at it again. Like, when I'm rereading something, I just, like, yeah, it's part of um, the language. Like, if it's crossed out, don't look.
I love it. Um, all right, Corin. So when it comes to the ritual, are you does time of day things you have to, I love talking about ritual. I was talking to an attorney the other day who told me that when he writes, this was fascinating. We live in Washington, D.C., just to give you some context in the D.C. area. 12 months out of the year, he has to write with a winter coat on because it gives him a sense of comfort and like security when he's writing. Even in the middle of July, when it's hot as shit here, he's got to still write with a winter coat on. But that's a part of his ritual. He discovered that because it was, I guess, winter. But I love that. I love those kind of stories. So I'm not saying you have something like that, but is there a time of day? Are there things you have to have with you where you find that you're most productive?
Yeah, time of day is important, I think. Um, for myself, usually if I'm successful with making something that I like, it's usually either like first thing in the morning or very late at night. Like I
Now,
find that
define morning. Hold on. Define morning for a songwriter because that can be like 11 o'clock. But what is morning?
for me, it's just whenever I wake up and have a coffee, whether it's
Okay.
like, yeah, what could be 7 a.m., it could be 11 a.m., you
Okay.
know, but it's just like, I think it's just the matter of like it being the kind of first thing. There's something about like it being the very first thing you do right as I'm having like my first sip of caffeine and like there's no, there haven't been any other distractions or like thoughts to kind of creep into my mind yet. Like I can kind of like correlate that like caffeine energy right into like making something new. Um, or the kind of opposite of that is just yeah, very very kind of late at night is like kind of the last thing, just working until you get too tired to like kind of continue on. But th- there's that similar kind of feeling of no distractions of that the only the only thing like at that point in time it feels like what I'm working on is kind of the only thing and I find it easier to get into that flow state. Whereas I don't know, just something about like during the middle of the day or other kind of normal hours, I can get a lot of work done on something that I'm like already working on, like finishing something. But yeah, it's less of a time where I'm like coming up with something new that I would like. Uh, and then something else I figured out for myself too is when I'm coming up with a brand new idea, it's easier to kind of take the pressure off a little bit because I have like kind of a whole like I have a home studio setup where you know I'm set up to kind of mix music and everything is like it feels very serious and very like oh this is where music is made, um, but a lot of my kind of better ideas I would come up with just sitting on the couch, like out like in the living room or like kind of taking myself putting myself somewhere that feels less where this it feels like the stakes are lower where like
Right.
it doesn't feel like oh I better come up with something good because I'm like you know really I'm in this is the place where serious work gets done or something like if I kind of trick my mind to be like it's okay we're just hanging out like we're just chilling on the couch like if I happen to make something good cool like it's kind of a trick that works for me where or even like if I don't even have my good headphones if I'm just like using like just my laptop speakers and I can only kind of like half hear what I'm doing like it just sort of like takes the edge off of something feeling important. um and I feel like it's easier to just kind of get into that like accidental like happy accident kind of space where you actually get something that you like without overthinking and asking yourself if it's good.
But you did say couch in the living room. So it sounds like there is a place when you're not in the studio, there is a
Mhm.
couch. I mean, there's a place where you are going to kind of lessen the pressure then.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, anything and it could be like you know, it's not always this like I'm not like, "Oh, this is I have to be on the couch in this way." Like it has to remain like because I feel like if I made that too much of a thing, I would be like I'd catch on and I'd be like, "Oh, that's where you make songs." but it has to stay this like kind of casual, accidental. Like, I might not always be sitting in the same place, or I might like, I might randomly be like at the kitchen counter or something. Like just kind of trying to make it seem accidental to myself, like it's just something I happen to be doing, not something that I planned for. Helps.
I love that, and I'm the same way. I mean, my story that I tell is I spent so much time sitting in this actual chair talking to this computer during COVID on work-related stuff. I can no longer be creative in this chair. I
Mm.
have to write in that chair behind me, because, it's in the same room is fine. I just cannot write in this chair anymore. I had a great interview about a year ago with Christian Lee Hudson, the songwriter, and he said, "My biggest hurdle as a writer is trying to hack my brain to become less critical." So the resistance to self-editing as you're creating, and I hear that a lot. I know as a writer, I absolutely try to avoid that. I'm a big I bow at the altar of the essayist, the novelist Anne Lamott, who wrote an essay I would teach called "Shitty First Drafts," and her thing is just get the draft out there. Don't worry about how bad it is. And it reminds me one more quote of the writer Anthony Doerr I interviewed, and he said he didn't believe in writer's block. He calls it a failure of courage and not writing the bad stuff. And I love all that. But I guess my point is that ever an issue? Again, I'll repeat the quote. My biggest hurdle as a writer is trying to hack my brain to become less critical.
Um, yeah, I I struggle a little bit with being too editorial, I think. And maybe that relates to my like habit to close things without saving them. Um, I think because I spend so much time kind of editing songs afterwards that it is, yeah, it's tricky to not over focus on that right in the early stages. But that's something that I want to try to do more is like when you're in that, I think the flow state is really precious, and that it's it's really easy to get kind of knocked out of it quickly. So I think it's good practice to try to get as many ideas out when you're in that moment at first, and then kind of worry about them later. But that's definitely something that I struggle with a bit. That like I'll I'll spend too much time on one element trying to just like, oh, like I'm like, oh, that I really love that synth melody, but like I'm still working, now I'm tweaking just the sound of it a little bit, or like the kind of the brightness of it or something. I'm like, if I've spent 10 minutes tweaking like an EQ on a synth sound, it's like then I've screwed up. I need to save that for later down the line. So, but that is something that I try to I often it's a trap that I fall into, that I need to try to just let something be kind of crappy as long as it has like its initial energy and idea behind it, and then leave myself open to come back and work on it later. So yeah, so work in progress for me on that.
But I think Corn, like you already said, like it is like writing a song is editorial. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to not do that off the bat. And like but at the same time it's like any kind of exploring we're doing respectively, like how Corin like is exploring sounds for a beat, or how I am like writing first thing in the morning to just put words on the page. It's like that is the part of the process that shouldn't be editorial, and that like often isn't, just because that is already our process, I guess. But like, yeah, I think and it's also like the fact that a song is ideas you love edited into something that creates a feeling, or a a memory, or um whatever you want your song to stir in people. It's like every step of the way you're trying to only harvest the ideas that make you feel what you want the song to feel like. So yeah, but also like this is the first thing I said in this interview. It's like all the greats are just like make it, throw it away, and then pilfer. Or when something's good, usually when you start too. So um yeah, that's like I think in terms of like how we think of ourselves as writers, it's really easy to be, I guess, self-sacrificial in a way where we're like, um, I don't know, like I do this often where I'm like, everything I wrote today is terrible. This is, and I'll still keep it. And then 3 weeks later, 3 years later, I'll look at it and be like, yep, still bad. There's something to also just throwing things away when you know they're bad. But then sometimes it's like, I think when you write something, when you're in a state that is not aimed at finishing a product, it's easier to harvest from that. When you're like reappropriating the like something you've made into something where it feels more appropriate, I guess. Recontextualizing something that initially existed for a different purpose. Does that, I got kind of meta. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it reminds me. My first thought is going back to the idea of it being there was less pressure. It's the less
Mhm.
pressure. Like you wrote that thing for a different purpose, and you repurposed it because you probably weren't writing it for that specific reason. So that's my first thought. Is it's there was less pressure there, so that's why it became so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I mean, and that's like for me the beauty of like keeping a journal or like trying to write like anytime like beautiful words go through my head trying to write them down or whatever, it's like that's I'm thinking maybe I'll use that as a song one day, but mostly I'm just like that's good. I need to write that down. And that I think that is more for me more of a successful practice than like a lot of other things I've tried is just like write it down when it's there. Um which also relates to like what Corin was talking about with spontaneity and yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's end with this. So, you mentioned poets. Megan, we'll stick with you. What poets have had the biggest impact on your life? Just not as a songwriter, just as a writer. Before you answer, I can count on the number, probably on two hands, number of songwriters who have ever read poetry, and it's deeply disappointing to me. So I'm optimistic, since you've already mentioned it. But I guess is a many part question. I mean, who do you like to read, poets or otherwise? And I don't care if they've had an influence on your songwriting. I just want to talk books.
Um the I love Ursula K. Le Guin, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And like also Octavia Butler, like sci-fi writers of the female sci-fi writers of an era. But yeah, yeah, just like incredible ideas, always beautiful, always political, and like selling it, you know. Um and and also like world creating. Yeah, yeah. I mean, creativity is like one thing. Um, but yeah, I think so in terms of writers, that's like off the top of my head, that's who I'd say. Um, Current day for writers, I've been really obsessed with Kelly Link and Karen Russell lately. Um, Poets, my like go to when I like want when I'm like okay, I would like to write a poem. Who can I read to like recognize the form of a poem? Um, Gabriela Mistral and like oh my heart and Neruda, I guess I would say. Yeah.
Are you the type of person? So when I finish a book, my first thought is I want to read someone else's voice. I'm not an author person at all. Like that's why I like short story anthologies because there's 22 different voices in there.
Yeah.
And I'm just never been an author person. I'm much more of okay, what else can I read? So are
Right.
you an author person or a genre person?
Ooh, somewhere in between, I guess. Like if I love something that like I love The Left Hand of Darkness so much that I'll read everything she wrote, you know? Or like yeah. So in and not and that's I guess about the author, not the genre. But like usually authors are genre writers. So
Yeah, definitely. No, I guess I meant like, but yeah, I don't think about genre at all. It's more, let me look and see, okay, who else what else can I read? But can you read? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think author, to be specific, because it's like, that's like, I love that person's expression, that person's like usually I'm looking for a line where I'm like, oh, that's like, like, I can't believe you just like put that line in the middle of a paragraph, like it doesn't matter, like that kind of thing.
It's so funny you say that, because as I'm thinking about this now, one of the reasons why I think I don't do that is, and I'm not saying what I do is right, obviously, but when I read, my first thought is, okay, if I read another book by that author, and I'll return to that author eventually, I think, but just not immediately afterwards. It's I've already like I just had that style, like I just saw that type
Oh
of
yeah, jump around.
sentence.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like one person's voice, and
Yeah.
you gotta rotate.
Okay, so last follow up to that, can you read more than one book at a time?
Yeah, can't is that a thing?
Well, I listen, some people can. I've heard my ranges. I've heard some people I've talked to have read 5 books at a time.
Okay.
I just do 2, but they have to be a different genre.
Yeah, like so you don't get the stories mixed up.
Well, it also, because when I'm not reading one, I'm reading like that other voices in my head, and I feel
Yeah.
like when I come back to the other one, it's a break, and I'm more anxious to get to it.
I if I need a break from a book, I often won't finish it. Yeah.
All right, Corin.
Yeah, no, I'm very tunnel vision with everything. Whether it's like reading a book, watching a TV show, playing a video game, like I won't even do I won't even different activities like that won't cross over. Like if I'm playing a new video game, I often won't even work on music that week. Like I will just do that. Like that entire and play it start to finish. Like if I'm gonna finish it, like because that's the other thing too. Like often, sure I'll get halfway through something and then like once it feels like I'm losing interest. Like I'm not a completionist, but I will watch like whatever the thing is, I will only be doing that. Or like if I'm really deep into working on music, I will only do that for that whole week, and I won't watch anything, read anything, etc., consume any media. Like it's very very one track minded in that way.
So do you how much does reading factor into that? Do you get to read a lot or no?
I don't read as much as I used to or would like to, but it is still like it's in you know general rotation a little bit. But yeah, I think I read a lot more when I was younger, and it's something that I want to bring back more into my regular routine.
And that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can find all the episodes on all major streaming platforms and also at the Songwriters on Process website. That is at songwritersonpodcast.com. Pre-2020, this was not a pod. I was transcribing all of the interviews. So you can find all of them, hundreds of them, many hundreds of them, on the Songwriters on Process website. You'll find both the transcribed interviews and the pod there. Take a deep dive, spend a day. These are great conversations with songwriters just about the writing process. Also, my book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, is out now worldwide on Hachette Books. You can find it online in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God, and it's his memoir. Again, that is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari. I am biased, but that's a damn good book. My email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love suggestions, questions, comments. People always email me and tell me who they want to see on the pod next. You never know. Send me an email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. That's it for me, everyone. Have a great day.